And I think we are going to be a young capitalist nation very soon.
But the reality is very different. A poor rural region which produces just enough to feed itself but little more, and which has been hit hard by international sanctions. There is fresh produce in the market, but at an ever-inflated price, and the choking off of foreign imports has left supermarket shelves empty. Timber has been one of their few exports, but since the war began, production at this sawmill has been cut by half. Now, because of closed borders, they can't even sell wood to Serbia, and sanctions have produced a critical shortage of spare parts. But these are resilient people who proudly relate a history of resistance to outsiders. Despite the hardships, they seem prepared to resist again. Kevin Dunn, News at 10, Pale, Bosnia.
Here, the Labour leader John Smith has come out against proportional representation voting system for electing MPs. It's what many of his party want. Mr. Smith said he was not convinced of the need for a change. Here's our political correspondent, Joe Andrews.
For Professor Plant, who spent the last 2 years preparing a report that proposes reforming Britain's electoral systems, today must have been a depressing experience. In effect, John Smith dealt the idea a mortal blow. In a statement to Labour's Executive Committee, Mr. Smith said that although he thought PR was right for European elections and a second chamber, he wasn't convinced of the need for reform in general elections.
I think people are entitled to vote for a set of policies and for a government to carry it through. But this issue has been discussed and considered for years. I think the right people to take a decision, if there's to be any change at all, is the electorate. After all, they should decide the rules more than the elected members should decide the rules, and that is why I've proposed a referendum.
But others refuse to give up the fight.
No, the day when I wake up and find there's nobody left to argue with, will be a very sad day for me. I look forward to having a civilised and interesting and, thanks to the Plant report, a very well-informed debate on this issue.
In a separate move, Mr. Smith has also backed an idea of John Prescott's to offer union members cut-rate Labour Party membership. It's a concession which may make the union leaders more willing to vote away their power in Labour's affairs when the one-member, one-vote reforms come up this autumn.
I think it is something that we can certainly discuss, and I'm hopeful that if we can find some common ground, that it is something that we could probably pull behind and operate as a workable solution.
So it now looks as though the idea of proportional representation for the Commons will probably be given a decent burial at this year's Labour Party conference. Mr. Smith has also significantly increased his chances of getting the unions to agree to his one-member, one-vote reforms at the same conference. Joe Andrews, News at 10 at Labour Party headquarters.
Buyers at Christie's auction rooms in London reached for their pocket calculators today as the bidding for a rare scientific instrument reached a new record. It went for £7.7 million. It was expected to fetch no more than 20,000. The item, a 19th century mechanical calculator. ITN's David Rose reports.
This beautiful little instrument made nearly £8 million today for two reasons. Firstly, no similar early calculator had been offered for sale for 70 years, most are in museums. And secondly, two buyers were today equally determined to possess it. Christie's had valued it at between £15,000 and £20,000.
20 years at Christie's is the most astonishing sale I've ever been to. When we got to £1 million, I thought, well, this really must be it. This must be the end. Then 2 million, 3 million, and eventually we got to 7 million plus the commission. Total of £7.7 million for a calculator.
The buyer was a Swiss private collector who made his record bids by telephone.
Christie's won't say who the calculator's original owner was, only that he was asleep when they called this afternoon to tell him his calculator had fetched 385 times their original upper estimate. David Rose, News at 10 at Christie's in central London.
Next tonight, fares for the village post office. Will government plans for paying pensions mean that some will close for good? The dam busters return to their training ground, a flying tribute 40 years on. And in Focus on Britain, fighting for their pay formula, why the fire brigade may be facing a strike.
If we don't make a stand with this, then the next thing they're going to bring in is redundancies and cuts.
You're witnessing a once-in-a-lifetime event. The birth of a car that takes motoring into a new era. The Citroën Xantia. With its unique road handling system, the Xantia offers levels of refinement and a degree of control and security you've never experienced before. The Citroën Xantia, the car to eclipse all others.
Once upon a time, the diesel car was an unfortunate beast. Slow, noisy, smelly, and smoky. But the diesel has changed, and so has our diesel fuel. SO Diesel 2000 is a brand new diesel fuel that helps cut exhaust smoke, reduces noise, gives better fuel economy, improves performance, and helps make diesels of every generation cleaner, healthier creatures. SO Diesel 2000, a new generation of diesel.
Old iron! Any old iron, any old iron, any old iron. If rusty railings give you heart failings, your gates in the state, don't hesitate. Grab yourself a brush, protect the gates rust. One coat is all you need, oh. It's gotta be right with Hammerite on iron.
Hammerite protects metal against rust because it has the barrier technology no weather can penetrate.
It's gotta be right with Hammerite on iron, on iron. Stick it on your drain pipe, all right.
We are legally required to tell you that shares of Scottish Cheddar can go down, as well as up. Make sure you get your share.
JJ wants his document in an hour. Okay, I'll do it. Don't panic. What can I do? Early retirement? I've only got one pair of hands. Oh, half. Go on. Anita, emergency. 5 charts to get your own tea bag.
Donna?
Rank Xerox laser printers are designed to be shared. Robust, fast, and so reliable, each one is available with our total satisfaction guarantee. Is it all right? Donna, I'm speechless. Oh, that's nice.
Faxing, scanning, copying, printing. Rank Xerox, the document company.
After yesterday's vote in Denmark to accept the Maastricht Treaty, Mr. Major was today looking forward to other issues taking centre stage in British politics, issues on which the Conservative Party isn't divided. Our chief political correspondent, Glyn Mathias, has this report.
The Prime Minister has been out and about today, making the most of the Danish referendum result. He was, among other things, opening a cricketing museum at Lord's. He certainly believes he's now batting on a better wicket. With the long and debilitating arguments over Maastricht almost behind him, he hopes Britain can ratify the treaty by the late summer.
I'd much rather we hadn't had this great disagreement within the Conservative Party. But we have a disagreement of people with convictions that differ. But we will get through that. We will conclude the bill, and then we'll turn on to other issues where those disagreements won't arise.
Tomorrow, the Maastricht Bill gets its third reading in the Commons, its last stage. Labour will abstain. It then goes to the Lords. Lady Thatcher and Lord Tebbit will try and force a referendum, but are not expected to succeed. After royal assent, there has to be another vote in the Commons on the social chapter. Some Conservative rebels will then fall in behind the government.
My own position would be, and I think it would be followed by a number of my colleagues, in fact, if not the most of them, is simply that we can't accept the social chapter.
But other Conservative Euro rebels will fight on to the bitter end. The Prime Minister did his best to reassure them tonight. He said no decision was imminent on Britain's re-entry into the exchange rate mechanism, and the community's current timetable on economic and monetary union was unrealistic. Glyn Mathias, News at 10, Westminster.
That Danish yes vote on Maastricht was followed last night by the worst rioting in Denmark's peacetime history. Opponents of the treaty and anarchists set up barricades in Copenhagen and attacked police with paving stones. They opened fire, warning shots at first and then directly at the rioters. 11 were wounded. 24 policemen were hurt. Post offices have been part of the British way of life for nearly 2 centuries. Today, the Labour Party said again that many village branches will close because the government wants to pay pensions straight into people's bank accounts. The Social Security Secretary, Peter Lilly, said that was scaremongering. He said the survival of post offices didn't depend on how pensions were paid. Hugh Pym reports from rural West Stirlingshire.
Tucked away in the Campsie Fells near Stirling, the village of Fintry. For the pensioners who live here, today's debate could hardly have been more important. For them, life without the local post office is unthinkable. The government's dilemma, processing each pension payment in a post office like this one, cost the taxpayer 44 pence. Payment through a bank account just 3 pence. But postmasters say if the benefits work's taken away, the whole business is under threat.
People, when they come in to get their pension allowance or whatever, they will then purchase their own goods. And if they go elsewhere for that, then they'll buy stuff elsewhere. Therefore the shop will not become viable and the whole thing will close.
And for Christine Rankin, like many other pensioners in Fintry, there's no choice anyway. The nearest bank is 5 miles away, and she has no car.
They wanted us to do a pension through the bank, but there's no way we can, because in a small village like Fintry, we have no transport. If you don't have a car, you are left on your own.
The government says it's not trying to force closures, it just wants to encourage people to take benefits through bank accounts. But despite that, suspicions remain. And the feeling here is that anything that takes business away from the post office is a threat to the entire community. Hugh Pym, News at 10 at Fintry, West Stirlingshire.
The army has begun blowing up its own chieftain tanks in Dorset, watched by Russian generals. It's all part of the Conventional Armed Forces in Europe treaty brought in at the end of the Cold War. Blowing the tanks up is the cheapest way of disposing of them. 183 must go in the next 3 years alone.
2, 1,
The prospect of the first firefighter strike for 15 years has again raised important question about industrial action by key services. The Fire Brigades Union is protesting at government plans to limit firefighters' pay to rises of 1.5%. For tonight's Focus in Britain, Tim Hewitt went to the west of England to hear why firemen and women dedicated to saving lives are once more willing to strike.
After 5 years' service, it pays £305 a week. It's dirty, dangerous and exhausting, but most firefighters admit there's nothing they'd rather do, all of which adds to the current sense of grievance.
B243 mobile, Lyle Avenue, crew of 4, leading firefighter Richardson in charge.
And if you could measure the heart rate of the officer in charge and the driver, it would go through the roof. Thinking all the time, what have we got to face, where are we going, what's happening?
Leading firefighter Tony Richardson from Kidderminster went on strike in 1977. Now he's ready to do it again.
The real issue is to keep the pay formula, to keep peace in the fire service, which we've enjoyed since the strike of 77.
And he's supported by colleagues for whom that strike is little more than a childhood memory.
None of us can actually afford to strike, but if we don't, and our pay goes down, we can't afford to live.
We've been put into the position where we've got to strike now, with the pay formula, just being taken away from us.
It's the formula, not the money, which really matters. It replaced hostile annual negotiations with an arrangement which keeps the fire service in line with wages paid to the top 25% of manual workers. The nature of their work creates a strong sense of solidarity among firefighters, and few are willing to break ranks over the threat of industrial action at this stage. But there are no delusions about how tough a fight it will be if they do go on strike.
The miners didn't win their strike, and there is a bit of a fear at the moment. Everybody's frightened about their jobs.
These Bristol firemen know that a strike will put lives at risk. It makes the decision even more difficult, and there's no disguising their unease over the personal stakes involved.
I think we're sort of treated no different than anybody else. We're just numbers on the payroll, and the more they can cut, the better.
We're all frightened to lose our jobs. I mean, I think everybody is. Nobody's job's safe nowadays. If we don't make a stand with this, then the next thing they're going to bring in is redundancies and cuts.
Wartime green goddesses will once again be taken out of mothballs if there is a strike. They were used by the Army in the 77 dispute. And at this military base in the Midlands, it appears they're once again ready to lumber into action. Both sides insist they want to avoid a strike, but after 16 years, industrial peace in the fire service is again under threat. Tim Hewitt, News at 10, Kidderminster.
Cricket news, an exciting if disappointing start today for the first Texaco one-day game against Australia at Old Trafford. Big hitting Merv Hughes, among others, took the tourists to a total of 258 for 9. Hick made 85 before being bowled by Rifle. The final over mix-up handed Australia victory by just 4 runs. Soccer, Scotland kept their slim hopes of World Cup survival alive tonight with a 3-0 win in Estonia. And finally, way back in 1943, people living near the Derwent Valley reservoirs in Derbyshire complained about the noise of RAF exercises. 50 years on, they were pleased to have them back. Jim Buchanan watched the dam busters return.
After 50 years, the Derwent Valley has been filled with the sound of Merlin engines again. A low-level flight, just like 617 Squadron in 1943, when they practiced here for the dam's raid.
We used to do circuits of this, come down the lake, through the dam, around the hill, and back again, and repeated that until we were quite happy that we were achieving satisfactory runs.
The Mona Dam in Germany would be one of their targets. Derwent Water was chosen for practice because it too had twin towers on the dam wall. This afternoon, a tribute to the dam busters from a tornado of today's 617 Squadron. And wreaths to remember the 53 who didn't return from their raid on 3 dams. Thousands gathered for today's events, including many veterans.
We old aircrew can't keep away.
And this is what they came to see. A Lancaster, once again, making its majestic approach towards the dam. Jim Buchanan, News at 10, Derwent Water.
And that's the way the news looks tonight. We'll be here again tomorrow. Until then, from all of us, good night.
Hello, good evening. Well, weather-wise, for most of us tomorrow, it's very much a mixed bag. Sunshine, a lot of cloud, and just a peppering of showers. The real hiccup being in the southeastern corner, more prolonged rain and some thundery showers as well. Now back to tonight, and these showers in the far northwest, they sort of fade away fairly quickly, leading to a mainly dry night with clear slots. Temperatures down to around about 5 to 7, that's the low 40s in Fahrenheit terms, but look at that, a sign of things to come for tomorrow. Though having said that, a reasonably fine day for most of us, some sunshine attempting to break through all that cloud, but look at it piling up there in that southeastern corner, and very soon that rain develops. Very, very heavy indeed. In fact, some of us in the southeast will be lucky to see any brightness at all tomorrow, and during the course of the afternoon, spreading westwards as well as northwards. Some of that really, really heavy at times. Keep your brolly to hand. With temperatures tomorrow, anything from 15 to 17, that's 59 to 63 in Fahrenheit, and feeling especially chilly on the eastern side of the country. Good night.
Tomorrow night, Arsenal and Sheffield Wednesday meet again. Ray Clements looks at their chances. We meet the Time Warp twins, born 18 months apart. Amy and Beth are a walking, talking miracle. VTTV has the lowdown on the latest video gossip, and the cause of East End gossip, Danny, pops in for breakfast with GMTV tomorrow.
For a range of office printers that are ideal for sharing, Call 0800 300 755 for your free Xerox Network Printers Pack.
Up on the roof, when this whole world starts getting me down, and people are just too much for me to face, I climb way up to the top of the stairs, and all my cares just drift right into space. I get away from the hustling crowd and all that rat race noise down in the street. On the roof, the only place I know.
Fly New Club World, and your mind goes free.
So let's go up on the roof.
New Club World, being introduced throughout this year.